My name is Ava Holloway. I'm 29 years old, and the first thing you should know about me is this. My family loved me best when I stayed quiet. Not happy, not successful, not healed. Quiet. The night everything exploded started with a lie wrapped in fairy lights and champagne. My younger sister's wedding rehearsal dinner was being held at a luxury vineyard outside Napa Valley, the kind of place influencers post with captions like, "Forever starts here," while waiters carry tiny appetizers that cost more than groceries. Everybody looked expensive, everybody smelled rich, and everybody stared at me the second I rolled through those glass doors. Not at my face. At my wheelchair. You learn the difference fast when you become disabled. Some people look at you with pity, some with discomfort, some like your existence ruined the aesthetic. My mother looked at me like that, like I was a stain on white fabric. "Ava," she said, air kissing beside my cheek, careful not to touch too long. "You came." Not, "I'm happy you're here," not, "You look beautiful," just surprise. Like I had the audacity to show up after everything. I smiled anyway because that's what survival looked like in my family. Smile, apologize, take up less space. 3 years earlier, I'd been a trauma nurse in San Diego. I worked 12-hour shifts, drank bad coffee at 3 a.m., and believed exhaustion meant your life mattered. Then came the accident. Rain, headlights, a drunk driver crossing lanes. I woke up 2 days later with a crushed pelvis, shattered vertebrae, and a doctor gently explaining that my legs were never coming back. You want to know something crazy? The pain wasn't the hardest part. It was watching people slowly treat me like I had already died. Friends stopped calling, coworkers stopped inviting me places, men suddenly spoke to me like I was fragile glass. But nobody changed faster than my family, especially my sister, Emily Holloway. The golden child. Blonde, beautiful, social media perfect Emily. The kind of woman who never entered a room. She arrived. Her fiancé, Carter Vale, came from old California money. Vineyards, hotels, investment firms, the whole country club package. This wedding wasn't just a wedding. It was a business merger wearing white lace. And apparently, my wheelchair didn't match the decor. I noticed it immediately. Every bridesmaid wore champagne gold. The flowers were ivory roses. The candles flickered soft amber light. And right beside the rehearsal stage entrance sat a handwritten sign. "Please keep aisles clear for photography." My mother's eyes flicked toward my chair when I read it. Then she smiled too quickly. We had to make some adjustments for the event. Adjustments. That word always means disabled people are the problem. I rolled farther inside anyway. The violin music floated through the room while servers carried crystal trays of wine. Somewhere near the terrace, Emily laughed loud enough for people to turn toward her automatically. That laugh used to make me smile. Now it made my stomach tight. She spotted me near the floral arch, and her entire expression shifted for half a second. Most people wouldn't notice. I did, because I'd spent 29 years learning exactly how disappointment looked on my sister's face. "Oh my God," she said dramatically, hugging me sideways. "You actually made it." I looked at her carefully. Why wouldn't I? She laughed too fast. No reason. But there was a reason. There was always a reason. Carter approached holding 2 champagne glasses. Tall, sharp jaw, perfect suit. The kind of guy magazines call effortlessly handsome. He handed Emily a drink, then looked at me differently than everyone else had. Not at the chair, at me. "You must be Ava," he said warmly. "Emily talks about you all the time." That surprised me enough I almost forgot to answer. She does? Emily's smile tightened. Of course I do. But something about Carter felt genuine, which made me nervous immediately, because genuine people become dangerous once they start noticing lies. Dinner began an hour later, under hanging lights across the vineyard terrace. The sunset painted the hills gold, while guests clinked glasses and toasted the perfect couple. Perfect. That word followed Emily everywhere, too. Perfect daughter, perfect sister, perfect future wife. Meanwhile, I was the tragedy everyone politely avoided mentioning. Halfway through appetizers, Emily stood to give a speech. I just want to thank everyone for supporting us, she said emotionally. Family means everything to me. I nearly laughed. Family meant everything to Emily as long as she stayed the center of it. Then she looked directly at me. And I'm especially grateful my sister could come tonight, despite everything. There it was, that pause, that tone. The whole table turned toward me with soft, pitying eyes. I felt heat crawl into my face.
Carter noticed. His expression changed slightly. Emily continued smiling sweetly. Ava's been through so much. We're all proud of how brave she tries to be. Tries. The word landed like a slap. I lowered my eyes to my plate, because if I spoke honestly right then, the whole vineyard would have caught fire. After dessert, guests moved toward the dance floor while a live jazz trio started playing near the wine barrels. I stayed near the terrace railing overlooking the valley lights. That's where I heard it. "You shouldn't have invited her," a woman's voice, one of Emily's bridesmaids. "She makes the whole wedding feel depressing." Another voice answered quietly. "I know, but Emily said their parents insisted." Then laughter. Soft, cruel, comfortable, like talking about me that way was normal. Maybe it was. I started rolling away before they noticed me, but then I heard Emily herself. "She just always has to be the saddest person in the room." Something inside me cracked quietly. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough. I backed away from the terrace and headed toward the side hallway leading inside. That's when Carter found me. "Hey," he said gently. "You okay?" I almost lied automatically. Then I looked at him and realized something terrifying. He actually cared about the answer. So I said the truth. "No." The music from outside echoed faintly through the hallway while silence settled between us. Carter leaned against the wall beside me. "You know," he said carefully, "I've noticed something tonight." I forced a smile. "People staring?" "No," he said. "People waiting for you to apologize for existing." That hit so hard I couldn't breathe for a second, because that was exactly it. Exactly. Before I could answer, Emily appeared at the hallway entrance, and she looked furious. "There you are," she snapped. "Everyone's asking where Carter went." Her eyes moved between us, then down to my chair, then back up again. And suddenly I understood something. She wasn't angry because Carter disappeared. She was angry because he disappeared with me. Carter frowned slightly. "We were just talking." "About what? Trauma?" "Emily," he warned softly. But she was already spiraling. "No, seriously," she said, wine sloshing slightly in her glass. "Every event somehow becomes about Ava's suffering." I stared at her. The hallway felt smaller suddenly. "You think I want this?" I whispered. She crossed her arms. "I think you enjoy people feeling sorry for you." Carter immediately said, "That's enough," but Emily ignored him. "You know what?" she snapped. "I'm tired of pretending. Ever since your accident, Mom and Dad treat you like glass, while I have to carry everybody else's emotions." My throat tightened. "You think being paralyzed is easier than being ignored?" Her face twisted. "At least people care." Silence. Cold. Heavy. Deadly. Even Carter looked shocked. Then Emily said the sentence that destroyed everything. "Honestly, sometimes I think the wrong sister survived." The hallway went completely silent. My heartbeat stopped. Carter stared at her like he didn't recognize the woman standing there. And before anyone could speak, a deep male voice came from behind us. "What the hell did you just say?" We all turned. My father stood at the end of the hallway. Except he wasn't looking at Emily. He was looking at me. With panic. Real panic. And suddenly I knew. He hadn't heard the whole conversation, only the part that mattered, the part they'd hidden for 3 years. Because the truth was this: the drunk driver who destroyed my spine was never a stranger. It was Emily.
The courtroom smelled like old wood, wet coats, and panic. Not loud panic, the quiet kind. The kind people carry in their throats when they already know the truth is about to crawl out into daylight and ruin somebody important. My name is Elena Brooks. I was 29 years old the morning I wheeled myself through the courthouse doors, while my mother stood 20 feet away pretending she did not recognize me. Funny how blood works. They ignored me when I cried in hospital rooms, ignored me when I learned how to dress myself again, ignored me when I begged them to tell the truth about the crash that shattered my spine. But the second lawyers got involved, suddenly everybody remembered my number. Outside courtroom 4B, reporters lined the hallway like vultures in designer shoes. Camera flashes bounced off marble walls while people whispered my family name like it belonged on television. The Hawthorns, Charlotte's favorite fake perfect family. Real estate money, country club smiles, charity galas, matching Christmas cards, a son headed toward politics, a daughter hidden behind a wheelchair. And today, everything was bleeding out in public. I adjusted the brake on my chair and stared through the courtroom doors while my attorney, Naomi Reyes, leaned closer beside me. "You don't have to look at them," she said softly. But I did, because for 3 years I had looked away while my family rewrote my life like it was some PR disaster they needed to clean up. Not anymore. Across the hall, my older brother Grayson stood beside his legal team wearing a navy suit worth more than my first accessible van. He still looked handsome. That was the problem with monsters like Grayson. People think evil should look ugly. They think cruel people announce themselves loudly. But Grayson smiled like a campaign poster. He shook hands like a preacher. He knew how to make women trust him and men admire him within 30 seconds. He also destroyed my life. And if Naomi had not found the evidence buried inside old police archives, he would have gotten away with it forever. My mother finally glanced toward me. Her eyes hit the wheelchair first. Always the wheelchair first. Then she looked away fast, like even eye contact with me could stain her reputation. Typical. The bailiff opened the doors. "Trial resumes in 5 minutes." Everybody moved at once. Reporters lifted phones. Lawyers grabbed files. My father straightened his tie like appearance still mattered. I rolled inside slowly.
Every wheel rotation sounded louder than it should have, because this room held the version of my family they spent years trying to protect, and today, that version was dying. The courtroom overflowed with spectators. Some came for gossip. Some came because Grayson had once donated money to their foundations. Some came because wealthy families falling apart is America's favorite spectator sport. The judge entered. Everybody stood, except me. Grayson glanced over at that. Even now, after everything, part of him still hated seeing me seated while everyone else rose, like my disability offended him personally. Judge Miriam Cole adjusted her glasses. Proceed. Naomi stood first, calm, sharp, dangerous. She said, "The defense continues claiming the defendant never intentionally endangered his sister during the engagement gala incident. However, today we will establish pattern, motive, and prior concealment tied to the original vehicular crash that caused Miss Brooks's paralysis." The room shifted instantly, because now we were no longer talking about one violent night. Now we were talking about the lie underneath it. Grayson's attorney rose immediately. "Objection." "Overruled," Judge Cole said. Naomi nodded once. Then she pressed a button. The screen behind her lit up. Hospital footage. Date stamped. 3 years ago. The night of the crash. I stopped breathing. I had never seen this footage before. The camera showed emergency staff rushing me through trauma intake while blood soaked the side of my jeans. Then audio crackled. A nurse's voice. "Do you know who was driving?" And there I was, barely conscious, crying, terrified, but clear. Grayson was driving. He kept looking at his phone. The courtroom went dead silent. I heard my mother inhale sharply behind me. Naomi let the silence sit there long enough to hurt. Then she spoke quietly. This statement disappeared from the official summary report. Another screen appeared. Phone records, timestamps, text notifications sent from Grayson's phone 34 seconds before impact. Naomi walked slowly toward the jury. The defense argued the crash was caused by weather conditions. She clicked again. Traffic camera footage filled the screen. Dry roads, clear visibility, no rain, nothing to blame except the man behind the wheel. A juror actually muttered, "Jesus Christ." Grayson finally lost composure. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "That footage proves nothing." Naomi turned toward him calmly. "Then perhaps the witness testimony will help." The side doors opened, and in walked Officer Daniel Ruiz, the retired highway patrol officer who first responded to our crash. My father's face went pale instantly, because Officer Ruiz was supposed to stay buried in the past. Naomi approached him carefully. "Officer Ruiz, did anyone contact you after the crash investigation?" He looked directly at my father. "Yes." My father's jaw tightened. Ruiz continued. "Charles Hawthorne requested I remove references suggesting distracted driving from preliminary paperwork." Gasps erupted across the courtroom. My mother covered her mouth. Naomi stepped closer. "And why would he request that?" Ruiz looked at Grayson. "He said his son had a future worth protecting." The silence afterward felt radioactive. I watched my father shrink for the first time in my entire life, not physically, spiritually, like the room finally saw him the way I always had, not strong, not respectable, just weak enough to sacrifice his daughter for his son's reputation. Grayson stood abruptly. "This is a setup." Judge Cole slammed her gavel. "Sit down, Mr. Hawthorne." But he was unraveling now, because narcissists survive through control, and today he had none. Naomi delivered the final blow after lunch recess. She called Vanessa Hale to the stand, Grayson's ex-fiancée, the woman who ended their engagement after he ripped me out of my wheelchair in front of 90 guests. Vanessa looked elegant, even exhausted, but her eyes held rage now, the kind born from realizing you almost married a predator. Naomi asked gently, "Did the defendant ever discuss the crash involving his sister?" Vanessa nodded slowly. "Many times." "And what did he tell you?" Grayson stared at her desperately, like maybe charm could still save him. It couldn't. Vanessa looked directly at the jury. "He told me Elena grabbed the steering wheel during an argument and caused the accident herself." A wave of disgust moved through the courtroom. Then Vanessa reached into her purse. "I also brought copies of his messages." Grayson's face drained white. Naomi handed the printouts to the judge. Then one message appeared on screen. "If Elena had just kept her mouth shut after the accident, none of this would have become complicated." Another. "The wheelchair changed her. People feel sorry for her now, and I can't stand it." Another. "Dad says she'll never fight back because she needs us too much." I thought the jury might hate him before, but after those messages, they looked horrified. Because cruelty inside private messages always sounds uglier than cruelty spoken aloud. It proves intent. It proves character. It proves the monster wasn't temporary. Grayson suddenly pointed at me. "She's destroying this family because she's bitter." The courtroom erupted. Judge Cole shouted for order, but Grayson kept yelling. "You think she tells you everything? She loved the attention after the accident. Everybody treated her like some tragic princess." My mother whispered, "Grayson, stop." Too late. He was drowning now, and drowning people pull truth underwater with them. He turned toward the jury, sweating hard. "She always needed to be the victim." That sentence hit me harder than the crash ever did, because there it was, the real reason he hated my wheelchair. Not guilt, not shame, jealousy. He could not survive being less important than his sister he broke. Naomi walked slowly back toward the center of the courtroom. Then she said the sentence that ended him. "Mr. Hawthorne, if your sister wanted attention, why did she spend 3 years protecting you?" Silence. Pure silence. Grayson opened his mouth. Nothing came out, because there was no answer. Only truth. And truth finally had witnesses now. The verdict came 2 days later. Guilty. On every count. Felony assault, reckless endangerment, witness intimidation, fraudulent concealment connected to the original crash investigation. My mother started crying before the judge even finished reading. My father just sat there staring downward like a man watching his empire collapse brick by brick. Grayson looked at me once as deputies cuffed him. No apology, no remorse, just hatred, like somehow I betrayed him by surviving. The judge sentenced him to 4 years in state prison, alongside civil penalties that would follow him for the next decade. But honestly, the prison sentence wasn't the part that destroyed him. The truth did. Sponsors vanished, business partners disappeared, his political ambitions died overnight. Friends stopped answering calls. People who once toasted him at rooftop parties suddenly acted like they had never known him. Turns out, reputation built on lies collapses fast, especially when video evidence exists. 3 weeks later, my parents sold the family estate. The big white house with the columns and perfect landscaping. The house where they taught me silence mattered more than honesty. I drove past it once afterwards. The for sale sign stood crooked in the yard, and for the first time in years, I smiled. Not because my family suffered, but because I finally understood something. Justice is not revenge. Revenge wants people destroyed. Justice wants truth exposed. There is a difference. A year later, I moved into a sunlit condo overlooking the riverfront. Everything inside it belonged to me. The accessible kitchen, the therapy equipment, the office where I built my remote consulting company, helping businesses design disability-friendly spaces. I hired people society underestimated: single mothers, disabled veterans, neurodivergent designers, people dismissed by polished corporate rooms like Grayson loved. And together, we built something real. Sometimes at night, I still replay the courtroom in my head. The gasps, the evidence, the moment Grayson realized power could not save him. But strangely, that isn't the memory that stays with me. The memory that stays is smaller, softer. After the trial ended, while reporters chased my family through courthouse steps, Officer Ruiz approached my wheelchair quietly. He looked ashamed, older, tired, and he said, "Maybe I should have fought harder for you back then." I stared at him for a second before answering. "Maybe," I said, "but you showed up now." His eyes watered instantly, because sometimes accountability matters more than perfection. People online still ask if I forgave my family. Truthfully, I stopped asking myself that question. Forgiveness is personal. Peace is practical. And peace finally arrived the moment I stopped begging people to love me correctly. These days, my phone buzzes with messages from others learning how to rebuild after betrayal. Women leaving abusive homes, disabled people learning independence, adult children cutting ties with toxic parents. And every time someone says, "You helped me believe I wasn't crazy," I remember that courtroom. I remember the silence after the evidence played. I remember my brother realizing the story no longer belonged to him. Families like mine survive through fear, through guilt, through image, through silence. But silence breaks eventually. It always does. And when it breaks, the truth walks in slow, like a wheelchair rolling across a courthouse floor. Impossible to ignore.